So I had a thought, big thought, lots of big thoughts in my head. As far as money with Keyforge, right? It's a very interesting thing to me because I always like to see things that go up in value and things like that over time. Not necessarily just to make money, it's just a very weird interest for me. So one of my biggest little examples is this guy. I collect Funkos, and that guy right there, on the initial purchase, he was only $3 because he was on clearance. And right now, he's about $20 in value on the market for Funko Pops. Now, what does that do with Keyforge? So check it out. Decks in Keyforge are already going for a ridiculous amount, possibly just for hype alone. And you know, that's perfectly fine. People are willing to spend that money and things like that. I don't think we should be knocking people for that. But what's going to really add value to these decks is when the competitive scene starts going. We're already seeing people spending money on, hopefully, which I'm not thinking that they're thinking because they're good decks. I'm really hoping because they think that it's hype. You know, spending $40 on what you want in a deck, like maybe it has your name, maybe it has the cards you want, it's the houses you want, things like that. Spending a little bit extra than the initial $10 buying price and spending maybe up to like $40 to $50 for a deck that you really want. You know, I never really see a big deal in that. If you can afford that, then, you know, more power to you. You're doing great. People spending $1,000 on decks and up to $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. It's a bit insane right now when in the market we're looking at just hype. Nobody knows what decks are really like huge powerhouses, and we're not really going to know until we see a competitive scene. Even with the deck that I'm playing with my Time Traveler and Maverick Penny, which I actually think will probably be worth money, which I might even look into, just see how much it's worth. Am I ever going to sell it? Fuck, no, it's mine. But, like, just seeing like how decks perform in tournaments where I went 3-1. And, you know, it's not really like even that big of a deal to even do that. I guess I did well in this tournament, but looking at how many chains I would have picked up after the tournament, and that's really what I want to get into. Chains. Chains is like the huge thing that I think is going to skyrocket the value of like the deck you have and the decks that you play with and things like that. Because I think any Keyforge player really kind of worth a salt in the competitive scene is going to have a bunch of decks. They're probably going to constantly keep buying decks, keep trying new decks, playing against friends in their decks, borrowing decks, etc., etc. Because it's so cheap. We're not looking for specific cards and specific decks to play in tournaments and things. And once we come out of it and we have a certain amount of chains on each deck, I think that's what's going to really kick off the huge value spike. So, you know, people thinking that Keyforge is probably going to fall off money-wise now, I think it's only going to get better once the competitive scene begins to grow a bit more. We still have a little bit of time before that. It seems like FFG is still kind of getting their ish together. So we're waiting on that to really kick off. But Chains is what's going to really put money on decks. Like, we're seeing $1,000 decks now, and that's all purely off hype, because people think that they will be good because the cards are good and whatnot. But once you see the decks that are winning, those are going to be decks that are going to be worth value. I was planning to keep some decks still like wrapped up in their boxes and stuff, but I just opened up my last one recently, and I think the decks have way more value outside their box. Because every deck's random, etc., etc. There's going to be plenty of decks out there that people are going to want that you may not want, you may not think are good, but maybe they're just not good for you, but they'll be good for other people, if that kind of makes sense. That's the way I'm looking at it right now. Because, you know, playing with different decks all the time, it kind of puts you in a position where it's like, okay, maybe this deck isn't good for me per se, but if my friend plays it, maybe in his hands it's a way better deck. So people find the decks that they like, and then going out finding, you know, on eBay for 40 bucks, you know, a deck that fits that playstyle and fits more to that playstyle, and feeding that. And then seeing like, oh, there's a great deck out. It's similar to the decks that I already play, and it has like 3, 4, 5 chains on it. You know, when the Premier event comes around and those chains are knocked off because you're not playing at just locals, and you have the potential to basically win this tournament with that really good deck and make your money back and a bit of profit. And that's just a way to look at it. Now, of course, this is just a card game, it's just cardboard, but it's just really fun. Like, fun should be prioritized first. But secondly, if some people want to make a little bit of money off Keyforge, there's really no reason to not do that or even shame people for doing that. That's a perfectly fine thing to do. That's what's going to build a nice, healthy community. Magic has an amazing community. I'm not saying, you know, it's the best community ever. I'm not saying it's, you know, but it's like when I see people at my local game store playing Magic, you know, there's a lot of passion around it. So passion is probably the word that I'm more so looking for. And the value of the cards, the value of the decks, and things like that. And we can really have that in Keyforge. We will just have to be able to look at the situation later down the road instead of judging it right now with people buying $1,000 Horseman decks. Which, you know, in my personal opinion, I still have not played against Horseman decks. I haven't seen a Horseman deck, things like that. I've seen them in person. I just haven't actually like played them. But at our launch event, there was a guy who had 2 Horsemen in his deck. So he had like 8 cards that were Horsemen, and you know, it didn't really mean as much because he still lost. He didn't even come. I don't even think he made anywhere near like the top 3. I'm not sure. I don't think he did. And it just kind of shows like the value of a deck really is going to be based on your playstyle, not just having really good cards. It's going to be about synergy for sure. It's just so happened that the 4 Horsemen are the most synergistic cards because they are just one set of 4 cards that all work together. But that's not necessarily what's going to make it good. It's going to be when it comes down to it, when we put good players in the ring and they go and they acquire chains. Now, a little caveat with that is the fact that just because the deck has a whole bunch of chains on it, that boy locked up and ain't getting out, it's been convicted, you also got to take into account what's the player base around the deck also. So it's going to be, you got to be a little cautious is the word. Cautious on which decks you're buying because of chains and things like that. Because, you know, they could have been playing in an area where there were just no good decks and no good competition to play against. And, you know, only thing's only going to be a few really trash decks in Keyforge. I'm not expecting there to be amazing decks all the time, balanced decks all the time, because it's still an algorithm. This is still very new. It's a very new card game, and it's a very new idea. So not everything's not going to be perfect yet. But so far, when I see everything's pretty balanced, and if you can find a deck that fits you, then using that is usually pretty ideal. But, you know, that was just a quick idea I've been having around in my head. Like, there's been people trying to make money off Keyforge, there's people who are making money off Keyforge. I know the guy who runs the buy and sell Keyforge Facebook page, and you know, and that's been pretty cool. And you get to see how many people are spending like $1,000 on decks, a few $100s on decks, and just being in that mix and seeing the value of decks. Because there's nothing wrong with making money through Keyforge. If you buy a deck for $10, you want to flip it for 100, and it flips for 100. You know, more power to you. There's literally nothing wrong with that. We shouldn't be undervaluing decks. We should be overvaluing decks, maybe. But if somebody can afford to put out $1,000 for a deck, perfectly fine. But I think the real big money in Keyforge upcoming, there could be more money for another way down the road, but a lot of money is probably going to be in not just having cards in a collection, but going out, playing your local events, which is going to keep the community alive, keep Keyforge going, and you selling your chain deck after you're bored with it. You know, it's a good idea. I think that's actually probably going to work. I mean, I could be wrong. Definitely let me know. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on as far as like Keyforge, like flipping decks and stuff when they have chains on it. I really gotta get a fucking outro.